Okay, well, hi there, two birds, two bats, various crazy people. Title of this video is You Don't Lose the Girl, You Lose Your Turn. And that was the first time I heard that, made me laugh out loud, was in Thailand in 2005. And it was just kind of a common joke because in Thailand is very well known for the sex tourism business, if you will. And certain areas, of course, are rampant with it, while other areas are just normal provinces, towns, whatever you want to call them. And that would be the running joke. If you saw a really pretty girl and some guy would say, gee, I wish it, that was me. The other guys would console him and say, well, you didn't lose her, you just lost your turn. Because out there and in that environment, men are looked upon as a commodity. And so you would see some, hotsy-totsy looking little female in a little mini dress and high heels and just this perfect 10, if you will, running around with some fat, ugly, old fart like, well, I don't know, yours truly. And I wonder, how can that happen? How can that be? At least I did. This was back in 2005. And it's because they don't like you, they don't love you, they don't think you're handsome, they don't think anything. You're just a commodity. You're a means to an end. And I'd almost forgotten all about all this. But two things happened. 3 days ago, I had a phone call with my friend Gary, who I was over in Thailand with, and he brought that phrase up. And I had forgotten about it, and we laughed about it. And he also brought up the phrase commodity. And I said, I'm going to remember that because there's a video I want to do, but I don't know how to do it. And this was actually, this whole video that I'm talking about now was truly inspired about 3 weeks ago from another conversation that I had with another guy. And I was in a coffee shop, and I was talking to him, and he's a gentleman that I've known for a number of years. And he's in his 70s, his wife is in her 50s. And we were talking about the usual topic, or the hot topic these days, is when will the Philippines open? When will people be able to come back in? How's this going to go on? And him and I were begrudging the fact that, one day it's open, and the next day it's closed. One day you don't need a pass, and the next day you do. And we were talking about the inconsistencies and the frustrations, and we knew that guys that we knew back home in the States or Britain or Canada were trying to get over here. Some had booked tickets just because of the chaos from this pandemic thing. And he says, there's some other casualties amongst all of this. And I said, what are you talking about? He goes, well, it's not just the foreigners that are suffering. And I misread him. And I said, yeah, I know. I says, the businesses, they're dying. Half the places that I used to frequent are closed. And the people are out of work. And the restrictions are just really draining poor little Dumaguete, Bakong, Valencia, Darwin, the whole surrounding area. He goes, no, he says, that's not what I'm talking about. He says, look behind you. He says, my wife's sitting there. So I looked, and sure enough, his wife was sitting there, and she was sitting with another gal about the same age, 50-something. And he says, you see that woman sitting with my wife? I said, yeah. And he said, well, her name is so-and-so, and she's really waiting for the Philippines to open up. And I said, oh, why is that? He says, well, she's really waiting for a fresh batch of foreigners. He said, a fresh batch. He goes, oh, yeah. He says, that's pretty much what she does. And I thought, well, yeah, all right. And it made me reflect, and I want to clarify two things here. Number one, the story I'm about to tell, if you will, and the reflections or the examples that I'm going to make are in the minority here. This is not Bangla Road in Thailand. This is sleepy little Dumageddon that I'm talking about. And then May asked me to clarify that the women in this thumbnail have nothing to do with the women that I'm going to talk about, because primarily one of the women is Baby May, my girlfriend, and the other two women are our friends who are in nice relationships and are nice girls. So I had to get that disclaimer out just to clarify. But there is a dynamic over here that I thought was worth addressing. Now, guys that have been here or are currently living here are already going to know exactly what I'm talking about. And this, I guess, would be aimed more for the guys that are coming over for the first time, like I did 5 years ago. And as I've said 1,000 times, I will never, ever, ever try to give any of you guys an advice. Primarily, I'm not an expert in relationships. I'm not an expert in dating. I'm really not an expert in anything. I'm pretty much just your common, walking around goofy idiot. And I've made my big share of mistakes. And, but I have gained some information, some knowledge, some observations that I think would be useful. And if I had those in my back pocket 5 years ago, which is what it's going on, how long I've been here, it would have been useful. It would have saved me some grief. It would have saved me some money. It would have saved me some time, some emotional distress. But looking back on it, I probably wouldn't change a thing, because it was those things that kind of helped form that information and form my personality and adaptation to my new environment here. But I call them professional girlfriends, and I'm thinking about the woman that was sitting behind me. And again, I want to emphasize, I don't want to be redundant, but I'm going to. This is not the majority of the women out here. Most of the women out here are nice, sweet. They're actually looking for a sustainable, meaningful, loving relationship with a monogamous relationship with a fella. That's bottom line. But I became acquainted with the professional girlfriends. And these are women that literally make foreigners a commodity. And some are really good at it. And some of them are not so good at it. And I was taken in by a number of these women. I don't want to kill you with examples, but I'll try to give you just a couple of quick stories, just to kind of drive home the point. Number one, I had a girlfriend when I first got here that was sort of a setup. And again, I won't belabor that point, but her and I split amicably. And I told her, here's so much money. What are you going to do? She goes, oh, I'm just going to go back to Mindanao and be with my kids. And, I'm sorry this didn't work out. And I really wish we weren't breaking up, but I understand the way that you feel. And I said, okay. And, again, I'm sorry, but, I've just decided that I don't see you and me having a future together for a number of reasons. And so she said, okay, well, thank you. And I gave her the money. And I said, I hope this is enough to get you home. Are you sure it's good? And she said, yeah. And 3 days later, she was living with another foreigner. She no more went back to Mindanao than I did. And so I thought, how did that happen? That was quick. Were they chatting before? How did she know this guy? And it was a guy I knew. And so then when I was single, I got immediately hooked up with another woman via other, well, I won't get into the details. But anyway, I kind of got pushed into a relationship because a number of Filipinos said, what happened to you and so-and-so? Well, we broke up and this and that and the other. And they said, well, we know this girl that would just love to go out with you. She's always been shy about you and this and that and the other, but she thinks you're this and she thinks you're that, and rah, rah, rah. And I knew who they were talking about. And I said, well, yeah, that'd be great. And so her and I kind of got together. And we were together for about 2 weeks. And I got pulled aside by a friend who said, you know what? He says, I don't really want to get involved in your life. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but that woman you're seeing has a boyfriend. And I said, no kidding. And he says, yeah. And so, again, I won't tell you all the details of it, but I did verify and validate that what he told me was true. And she not only had me as a boyfriend, but she had 3 or 4 other guys that she was chatting with online and doing this and kind of seeing this guy over there and this guy over here. The one that I found to be the funniest was I was good friends with a woman about 3 years ago, and we used to hang out. We were never a couple. We had never been physical with one another. It had always been a platonic relationship, and we had always enjoyed each other's company. And she was a piece of work. I gotta tell you, she was working. She had one guy here in town that to this day, as far as I know, they're still the couple. He's gone back home. I won't mention the country. And he's under the impression that they're still boyfriend and girlfriend. In fact, he had taken her on this big, long whirlwind trip and whatnot. Unbeknownst to him, because she told me all this stuff, while he was in town and before they went off on their 7-island hopping tour, or whatever he paid for, she had another guy in town at the same time. And I said, you got to be as paranoid as can be, because what if these 2 guys clash into one another? She goes, yeah. She says, it's really scary. She says, but it's kind of exciting too. And she would go over and see one guy and then come back and see this guy. And she was juggling all of this. One of the guys she had gone down and met at the airport, so she made sure that, because she knew that this guy was, a gold mine, and she didn't want anybody else being able to get to latch onto him. So she was kind of chaperoning him during his whole week-long vacation. The other guy stayed in town, took her on the trip, came back. I met him. I chatted with him. Of course, I never said anything to him about what was going on. It wasn't my place, and I was friends with her, and I figured he would figure it out. And in fact, while they were together and he was spending more money than you can imagine on her, she actually faked a sick grandma and flew to, I think, Manila to hook up with a guy that she actually did like. And she knew and liked to party with, and then came back and went right back to this guy. So she is what I would call a professional girlfriend. There are, again, I'm not giving advice, but I have observed that there are some patterns and some hot buttons and some red flags, I think would be a better description of what I would look out for if I was coming over here for the first time. Number one, there's an old saying, you can take the girl out of the bar, but you can't take the bar out of the girl. And I think that's pretty apropos. Granted, the girls will tell you, oh, I just started, I've just been here a week. Well, maybe they've just been there a week, but they're not telling you that they worked for 2 years at another bar up the road. And so the bar girls, if you will, and there's not really bars out here, they're more like restaurants with bars. They just tend to be the ones that are kind of glomming on to the foreigners. And like me, with the first girl, they'll get together with a guy, they'll be with him for a period of time. Usually the guy will break up with her simply because she's too clingy, she's too possessive, she's high maintenance, she's always asking for a new phone, or there's always a family crisis or whatever. And again, so he'll give her the not the boot, but he'll break up with her. And most of the guys that I know are cool about it. They just, they hear some money. I'm sorry it didn't work out. They try to leave the girl in better condition than they found her, at least financially. And they're not being mean or anything like that. They're just saying this isn't working and we got to split. So let me help you. Let me make this pay 3 months for your boarding room or whatever you're living in. And it almost inevitably within a week, she's with another guy. And I could go on and on and on and on with 20 more examples of this. Couple of things that I've noticed is the women that I were with that were like that had some traits and qualities that were very consistent. Number one, they were constantly on their phone. Sometimes they would leave the room and get on their phone and like shut the door or pretend to go to the restroom, and they were talking to other guys. Multiple Facebook accounts, Instagram accounts, this account, that account, dating sites on their apps, and they'll deny all of it. They don't want you to look at their phone. I walked by one woman that I was seeing, and she went like this when I wasn't trying to even look at her phone. I was just walking behind her. She had her phone like this, and when I approached her, she went like this. So who knows what she was doing? And these are just little things that I found. So if I was going to give myself advice, because I'm not going to give you any, because I don't know you guys, and you guys can make your own decisions and draw your own conclusions. There's two words that strike me as being golden out here to not get taken advantage of. And I'm not saying don't go out. I'm not saying don't meet these women. I'm not saying, don't have a good time and give it a shot, because maybe she is the one. Again, there is no absolutes in any of this. But the two words that I would just remind myself of is, and I did put that, and I did practice what I'm preaching right now, is I slowed down. Slow down. Don't just jump in. What do they say? Fools rush in where angels fear to tread. Heed those words, Paulie. That's what I tell myself. I did that with May, and we are now hitting our 3-year anniversary. When May and I first met, she was working. She was working at a catering business. She wasn't working in some bar. She'd never even been in a bar. And I found that to be a very good trait. When I took her to a resto bar, she didn't like it. She said, I'm not comfortable around these guys. I'm not comfortable around this environment. I'm not comfortable around these women. And I was talking to a guy today, and I said, you know what? It took about 6 months. And I hate to admit this, because I hate to admit when I'm wrong. But May was right. It was really a waste of time and energy, and it was redundant to go to those places. Now, every now and then I'll pop in and I'll have a meal, or I'll meet some guys and have a breakfast with them or whatever. But as far as a lifestyle, going to the resto bars and the foreigner bars and the beer and the this and the that and the other just no longer appeals to me. And I've found that life has become a lot more fulfilling with a monogamous, loving relationship that I fortunately have found with Baby May. And that, my friends, is my story, and I'm sticking to it. And so I hope that this video finds you well. I hope that, again, I didn't give you any advice, but I hope you get my drift. All right, so I'll catch you guys in the next video.